We were so excited to have this movie fronting the lineup of super nerdy films at Doc NYC. It was super great, and then it's a completely different film, like at different times in the film. You build it up as a thriller. I love science films, but this also doesn't read like a science film in a way. And I want to start for the end, and I'm going to ask you later how you met him. But I want to start for the more controversial thing about this film for me, which is when you realize that this guy was obviously having mental illnesses or some sorts, or like a problem with emotional problems. I don't know how you would define it, and you can really see. And I love the self-reflectiveness part of the film. I think is generous and brave at the same time, but also risky. So tell me a little bit about these difficult decisions you made, and then we'll go back to the beginning, and we can trace like a little bit of a circle of how did you ended up ending the film like this. And how did you make the miracle of getting...
I actually have an answer to this question.
Okay, great.
I met Joe 13, 14 years ago. And our first phone call, it lasted probably 5 hours, on and off. And there was something, off with him. He was the Messiah. He was being followed. He had a motor that worked. All this kind of stuff. And so I, dove into getting to know the guy. Something about him really captured me. And, when I had the question of, is he nuts, or does he have a working motor? Is it all bullshit? Is part of it real? I didn't know. And so the journey for me became first, meeting the guy and seeing that he wasn't nuts at all. He was eccentric, but his story was quite clear. He might have told it in this really random fashion, but he wrote it down and lined it up, and it made sense. And I started to believe in him. Then I started to meet some of the scientists who talked about his technology, and eventually, tracked down some of the politicians, and really started to believe in the technology. So, cut to 11 years later, you start making a film and tracking everyone down and working with Joe, and fast forward to the end of that process, you've got a whole movie done, yet nothing's happening with the motor. And that question still remains. So I might say this a couple of times tonight, but a lot of moments you'll see in the film are amalgamations of many things that happened with him. And they're all true events, but they really can represent things that happened over the years. So we had set up a series of efforts to try to help Joe get the technology out there. We went so far to, we were reaching Ray Kurzweil. We had a guy trying to reach Elon Musk. We had a television studio the guy that makes all the car shows in LA, fell in love with it, and he had a 36 camera studio just waiting for Joe to come and build his motor in, and all this kind of weird stuff, and Joe wouldn't go for any of it. So this one investor you saw who happened to show up at one of the presentations we did that a producer brought along, he'd seen Joe on The Tonight Show 20 years prior and was interested. He's an engineer himself. He owns an oil rigging company. He certainly has the finance to do this kind of thing. And when that blew up, it was at the tail end of trying so many things, and we didn't really have any way of explaining where the story ended. So to kind of answer your question of how did I make a decision to cross that line with him at the end, I've been standing on that line for a long time. And there's a few people here who knew Joe 20, 30 years ago, and I think they would tell you that if you, told Joe he was wrong in a consistent fashion, he would, let you know where the door was.
But I seem to believe that while watching the film that it was real, that the science was good, but somehow he never got around to prove it, or he was his worst enemy and deteriorated emotionally more and more to the point where he couldn't prove it, or was it always never real?
Well, I personally think it's real, but that means very little. I think if let's assume it is real for a moment.
Yeah.
And sort of like we're looking for a villain out there, and I spent a long time looking for a villain. Maybe it's that innovation is going to happen outside of the scientific community, and it's going to happen by people who aren't sort of trained what's happened in the past by experts and try to be approved of within a scholastic system. But then those are the worst guys to then engineer these things and bring these things to society, because you need great cooperation and great funding and university funding and all that kind of stuff. So that's one kind of issue. The other I think that's real is that Joe was really married to this thing. And he was, we had this conversation earlier tonight, he was an artist, and he had a great creative vision, and he saw things that other people couldn't see, but potentially he wasn't a great engineer. And getting something like this from, from its infancy into something useful is quite a journey, and it's quite a difficult journey. I mean, I'll give a broader answer just from the sort of scientific perspective. Historically, the 1800s, we spent a lot of time developing mechanical innovation. Think of the steam engine and the Wild West, as it were. In the 1900s, we worked on the electron, and we started to understand it. And we've done things like satellites and rocket ships and cell phones. And, as we really get into understanding what a magnet is, what the particles are in a magnetic field, we might sort of get into that Buck Rogers kind of future. And, if that is the case, I think Joe's a guy who's on the precipice of that. But yeah, I cared a lot about Joe. Last time I called him, I waited after this a year to call him, and I called him to see if he wanted to come to a premiere of the film at a festival. And I found out he was, that he died there. And I was, really upset. It's so. I mean, the question of how did I decide to kind of jump in and give it my all with him? It's more self-serving than that, is the honest truth. I mean, I had great curiosity about the story 13 years ago, and then it was something I just couldn't get off my chest, and it was sort of one of those things that I thought, like, shit, if I die one day and I didn't do this, it's going to be that weird thing that I wonder about. Like, what would have happened if you did that project? It was bugging me kind of to that degree. But I didn't have the stamina that Joe had. Making a movie is really hard. And it takes a really long time and a lot of finance and a lot of cooperation. It's an incredibly humbling pursuit.
Something that I was curious about is, with all the great scientists that were part of this team, how is it, with all the documentation that they must have and the knowledge of how this thing worked, how they didn't try to replicate it? Was he always it's like Coca-Cola, keeping the hidden ingredients secret from everybody, or?
Maybe there's a little bit of engineering that needs to be done. Other people say that they have replicated it. His team, I met up with one in Natchitoches, Louisiana, in a shack in the woods. Another went on to work on other things, and so it's I don't know. It definitely begs the question of, is it real? Because people didn't pick it up and just run with it and immediately do it. And so we'll see. We'll see. I definitely am talking to a few people who say that they're on the verge of this, and I have the attitude of, well, if you are, then let's look at it and let's show it to people who are of the mind that can understand it, and let's have a conversation. I mean, I don't know. I think it was all in his mind. He wrote a book that he published. It's all over the internet. He, said that he was disassembling the motor to sell the copper inside to just kind of survive. Us that were close to him don't really believe that to be true. We think that he wanted to take his baby with him. He knew he was going down. He had congestive heart failure. He was getting really sick towards the end. He very quickly became very bloated, and it really looked like the end. So I mean, I get this question a lot of, is it possible? How do we do it? How do we, and I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping this film sparks interest. I mean, maybe this gentleman's right, or there's the other side. And I'm hoping the film sparks some interest. I mean, a story like this hasn't really, shot around the globe. And as thin of a line as a documentary film may make around the globe, the goal is to kind of get that out there and get the conversation and spark some imagination and see where it goes. There's plans online. There's guys who say they're making NEWMAN motors all over the place. So if there is something real out there, I believe that it could congeal. That's the question I wanted to answer. I meant to have this film be something, large and important about energy when I started it a long time ago. And, Joe's character really took over the whole journey. And it took over his life, and it took over the story, and it took over my movie. And so that's what it's about. I mean, the answer is yes across the board. Everyone says they're doing something. Most of the people I talk to seem pretty ineffectual. There are a couple of people who sound about as sober and sane as they come, and could run with that torch. But I don't know. I mean, this really, you know, this is a tragedy about a man who gave his all for something that he eventually sabotaged on his own. Maybe because he was hiding something, maybe because he had childhood things, maybe because it just, you know, became too much for him to bear. And that I could definitely tell with some authority, you know, was there for that. The rest, I don't know. You know, I really don't know. But this information is about as open source as it comes. And if you Google search free energy motors, I think you'll find like 8 million hits. You know, what's real, what's not, I really don't know.
Something I really like about the way you made this film also is that you give a great space to the people in the journey that help him. So, like, I mean, the family's not really there, obviously, for obvious reasons, but his friends, like, even to the new roommate, you know, like, everybody that has, even you, you know, like, everybody that has encountered him, he had the heart and the charm and the, you know, and the intellectual pursuit to bring you all around him, to help him make his dream possible.
I mean, in the beginning, he really did. You see, look, I mean, that's the heartbreak of this. In the beginning, he's like this sweet, open-hearted guy with a great house and a great wife and a new kid, and come in my garage, let's work on this stuff together. And by the end, he's really, you know, contorted and angry, and still just as sweet and big-hearted. I mean, I really love this guy. But he just, you know, despite his sort of best self, this is what the tics that would continually come out of him.
You also, thank you so much for the great film. Thank you so much.